Joonas Korpisalo has spoken out and detailed his frustration about this season with the Boston Bruins in his first year after the Linus Ullmark trade. We're going to be breaking down what he had to say, what frustrations he had, and what this means going into this offseason for the Boston Bruins with a lot on their plate when it comes to goaltending after a already very busy last season with Jeremy Swayman. We're going to be breaking all of that down here in this video, but very quickly before we jump into it, and as I mentioned in yesterday's video, we have a lot of news to cover here starting in this offseason, arguably more than what we've had this season. So if you're looking for all your spot for the Boston Bruins news, you're in that right spot. Hit the sub button. We know that just over 70% of you guys watching right now are not subbed. We're going to have a lot of stuff going, potentially a video later today or tomorrow morning once again, with all this press conference news coming out here with Don Sweeney, Jeremy Swayman, all these guys that we're waiting to hear from going to be coming out as the days go by. But without any further ado, let's get into our first screenshot here from Ty Anderson, going on what Joonas Korpisalo had to say, and then we're going to following into a deeper dive quote from him. Ty Anderson put out the big part here from Joonas Korpisalo. He says, "I don't think there's any goalie in the league who's comfortable playing only 20 to 25 games." And that is a very reasonable opinion here from Joonas Korpisalo, especially coming off the season he had where he was not horrible starting off this year, but when Jeremy Swayman's here coming off another contract, it does make sense from an outside standpoint. But we're going to kind of go into that deeper here in a moment, but following this bigger quote here, coming here from Andrew, he says, "So I'm going to push for more games and for sure, and we'll see what happens." They are following that original quote here from not being happy with his games played in this season. Now, when Joonas Korpisalo came into this team, we knew that he wasn't going to be the head goalie. We knew that there was a chance he was going to start the season, which he ultimately did, waiting for Jeremy Swayman to sign a contract, and we were waiting for that for quite some time, and ultimately we know what happened there, and we saw the contract that he, arguably earned, definitely earned it last season, but this most recent season that we saw here definitely didn't live up to that contract, so Joonas Korpisalo, rightfully so, was not very happy about his games played. But when you do come down to the situation the Bruins were in, just paying Jeremy Swayman 8 whatever million, there was zero chance that he was not going to be the starting goaltender here for this season. And Joonas Korpisalo may have wanted the 50-50 split that he saw with Linus Ullmark, but when the contracts were very similar between Ullmark, very similar between Swayman, there made sense to be a 50-50 split when you have two very, very good goaltenders. And we're going to kind of dive into a bit here also in a potential trade option that we're looking at, mainly due to the fact that he said he's going to push for more games. We know the Bruins are very tight on their goaltending. They don't like to be able to, move it around. Like, they like what they want to have. They want to have that in there. And Joonas Korpisalo certainly is a phenomenal backup. He's had excellent games this season, but also some stinkers, if you will. But, from what we saw from the team, what we saw from the Bruins organization in moving players up and down when they were in not the great situation, when it comes to the team having zero chemistry at the beginning of the season, a lot of this makes sense for the goaltending stats throughout this season. We saw Joonas Korpisalo get better, and we can't say the same with Jeremy Swayman. But when it does come down to the contracts between the two, it made sense that we're not seeing Joonas Korpisalo in a starting role. It really made sense that 20 to 25 games that he mentioned. I could have seen him go up to 30, maybe 35, especially with the way that Swayman was playing, but I think the Bruins were just trying to get Swayman to get back under his feet. Ultimately didn't happen, and the point where they were eliminated, they were just kind of rolling whatever was going to happen in that game. So, I'm not going to take that too much, but when we're looking at $11.25 million for some goaltending here, that is quite a hefty price. And Jeremy Swayman obviously is taking the big blunt of that with that $8 by $66 million contract that he signed in the offseason. That is going to be a big point of concern for the next few years. Not the fact that Jeremy Swayman's under that contract, but what is going to happen with the backups on this team? Because Joonas Korpisalo certainly has been proven to be able to be a very solid backup, and when we're looking at the potential move for him, that's where things can get a little bit squirrely, and also the goaltending in the AHL, which we're going to dive into here in a moment. But when it does come down to looking at these two stats here in this season, very, very similar. I believe a 1-point difference here on the save percentage, but the goals against is where Joonas Korpisalo really, proved himself to be much better than Jeremy Swayman here in this season. Of course, a bigger sample size from Jeremy Swayman, but Joonas Korpisalo, I feel, had many more moments of stellar goaltending than Jeremy Swayman did this year, and I feel like that's something that, could be argued, but I do feel like Joonas Korpisalo had much more of an impact when he was in net than Jeremy Swayman. Jeremy Swayman had some very, very bad games, multiple games where he let up 6 goals against, and not putting Korpisalo in for a lot of those games was a questionable decision, but made sense near the end of the season. Joe Sacco was working with what he had and could have made some different decisions there, but Bob Estes certainly put his work into Joonas Korpisalo here in this season, and bouncing from that season last year with Ottawa, he had a much better season. And going from what we saw in LA 2 years ago, he was a very, very good goaltender then, which really showed the capabilities of his play in this season. Now, when we're looking at Joonas Korpisalo, however, things may be interesting here in this offseason, especially with the AHL goaltending, which we're going to dive into their contracts here just in a moment. But with that quote here, and I'll pull this up once again from Joonas Korpisalo, going to push for more games for sure. We'll see what happens. I'm very, very concerned about the Bruins not giving him more games than this. And I feel like they're going to put a lot on Jeremy Swayman next year. The fact that he's coming into another contract, coming into another season where he's going to be playing for this 8.25. He's going to be pushing for more games, better play, and hopefully get back to the point where we saw him last season in the playoffs, where he ultimately was the reason the Bruins got there, and of course, got eliminated, but got to a point where they were able to contend and compete with the Florida Panthers to a Game 7. So I want to know what you think about that. First of all, what do you think about Joonas Korpisalo? What do you think will happen to him? Do you want to see a trade? Do you trust him again? Do you want to see 11 as a back, or 11 total on the goaltending side of things? Do you think he'll get more games? But let's dive in quickly to our backup goaltending here, because I wanted to pull up the contracts of Mikey DiPietro and Brandon Bussi. Both of these guys, both UFAs here. Mikey DiPietro, and a very interesting one, is going to be one that I think has a very big opportunity to be a good NHL goalie. And we see him behind Swayman right now, just a year younger than Swayman. Swayman 26, the same age as Brandon Bussi, but Mikey DiPietro has really earned himself a spot in this team. And it will be interesting to see if the Bruins believe that as well, if they think he could become a solid backup for this team, if they believe that Bussi could be a backup for this team. The AHL goaltending has been very, very good this season and has been good for the past few years, and it's going to be a tough kind of look to keep these guys in the AHL after performing so well. We've seen Michael DiPietro be given that opportunity as a starter in the AHL, as well as Brandon Bussi. Both have played very, very solid, and it's tough to see both of them down there being that 50-50 role when both are fighting to get a spot. So if a trade for Joonas Korpisalo can materialize, it would be a great opportunity to bring one up, give that other a permanent starting role, and kind of work from there to be able to see what happens. You can't keep these goaltenders in the AHL forever. You can, however, work them into a lineup and potentially see where Joonas Korpisalo goes. It may be very difficult to move that $3 million contract, as it is for a couple of years. I believe 4 more. I have the contract here somewhere, but after this season, it'll be 3. Teams won't want to really take that on as a backup, but potential starter roles could be a great option for him. There's a few teams that we're going to be looking for goalies, depending on what happens with their contracts, their free agency, and could potentially look for a guy like Joonas Korpisalo, who could bounce back to Los Angeles Kings form. So let me know what you think about Joonas Korpisalo's quotes here. What do you think is going to happen with him next season? Do you want to see him a backup? Do you want to see him out? I'm a big fan of Joonas Korpisalo. For those who have been here for a while, you know that I'm a big fan of him, and I really believe that he could be a very, very solid goaltender, even in a 50-50 role. But Jeremy Swayman's contract really just does not allow that for the Boston Bruins. So let me know what you think about this video, the stuff in it, the Joonas Korpisalo deal. You want to see a potential Mikey DiPietro backup next year, Brandon Bussi backup. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But that's all I got in this video. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well. But I'm signing out. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.